Previously on agentpalmer.com, the wisdom of Simon Wilder in With Honors, remembering Andrew Belling, and Ed will return for my thoughts on Voyager, which I am very much enjoying. This is the Palmer Files, episode 146, with the return, or more accurately, the continuation of my conversation with Hal Nathan. During this episode, you'll hear us discuss editing and process, movie length and consuming film and media, structure and creation, plus I may or may not rant about the film industry. Are you ready? Let the show go on! Welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 146th episode is Hal Nathan. Hal is back as we continue our conversation from episode 143. As has happened before on this podcast, one recorded conversation was enough for 2 whole episodes, but this one is very different from the first. In fact, this one is much more about Hal asking me questions. Just listen as Hal asked me about editing and process, plus we dive into the entertainment industry from our respective perspectives. A few notes and corrections before we jump in. Real Genius is not 87 minutes long, it's 106. Ghostbusters is 105. So I'm not sure what movie I was thinking of, but then again, that just happens sometimes. However, they are more reasonable than some of the 120 plus minute movies that keep coming out. Dazed and Confused is 102, and Interstellar is just shy of 3 hours at 2 hours and 49 minutes. This will all make sense soon. But first, remember that if you want to discuss the episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related ways to contact Hal and myself in the show notes. You can visit Hal's website, halnathan.com, where you can see what he's been up to and what he's hit publish on. Don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get back into it.
We talked about writing and editing.
Yes.
And it was when we were getting into a deep dive about, I was talking about learning just like the keyboard and learning the softwares and figuring out
shortcuts, keybinds.
Yeah, shortcuts, yep. And just the whole thing, all of that, the editing side. I definitely know that as the writer and director of the film, of the short film that I made, it made it, specifically as the writer, it made it so difficult when I got so attached to that script.
Okay. Yep.
To then go and edit for my script.
Yep.
If that makes any sense.
No.
And I felt like
it's thanks to DVD commentaries, and I don't know who said this. It's very much once you get into the editing bay, you can keep your script for the rough edit, the linear edit, this tells the story in the way I envisioned on the script. And that's always 2.5 hours for a 90-minute feature, right? Like it's always an hour longer than you need it to be.
Yep.
But once you use the script to build that 2.5 hours, you have to throw the script away. That's the only way to do it. Basically, from there, you're using an outline of what exists, not what's in the script. Which means you've already thrown away some good script stuff that just didn't film right or didn't sound right or whatever. And that's when it becomes a sculpture and you taking away subtraction. It's addition by subtraction. Up until that, whatever that rough cut is at 2.5 hours, or 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it ends up being, that's addition by addition. Well, once you establish like, all right, this is my final director's extended cut, it's addition by subtraction the rest of the way, and you can't use the existing script anymore. And it's painful, but you almost have to think of it as a completely different project at that point. And I think that's the only way you can look at it. I mean, I do the same thing with podcasts. There's always outlines. There's always things people want that, like, oh, I want to cut this out. Like, okay, that's fine, but like, it's just for whatever reason, it's just not possible to cut that out, or it's just not possible to leave that in. Well, now you have to make that work around it. And you just have to go, okay, like, you have a decision to make. And if you're editor and director, it's a lot easier of a decision to make. But if you're just editor, you go to the director and you went, do you want this to be good, or do you want it to be yours? So it's really one of those two options. It's like, that's fine. Like, you can make all the decisions, or it can be good, because 4 hours, probably not a feature that is going to work well, right? Like, that's not what most people sign up for. So I like to think that it's the same way with writing to me. When you get the first draft done, that's half the battle. You're starting over. Like, it's a new sheet. It's just time to figure out what we messed up the first time. But you have to treat it like a different project. Because when I do, and it takes a while to get there, when I do the intros for this show, originally I treated my intros as what was on the page is what you're going to read. But I want a good product for people to listen to. So maybe my writing's not always, even though I'm writing for me, like, how comfortable can we be writing for ourselves? Like, it's as comfortable as you'll ever be. But you need to do more, right? And I think that's where you have to treat it very differently as a separate project. You'll always have that script. You can always go back to it. But, like, you have to leave it at home. It's no longer your guidebook anymore, which is good enough because it got you to this point. Now it's time to hack away at your baby. And
pretty much,
it's not easy.
Yeah.
But this is where I would tell you, turn everything you do, every script you have that you don't sell, just turn into a project for yourself. Because the more you do it, the easier it will get. Every project's different. There's never going to be like well, I'll always cut out the ums. Like, that doesn't work, right? Like, sometimes you need those in, but the more you do it, and that's where that's where it's like playing an instrument. That's where it's like guitar. You're going to be better with calluses, but the only way to get calluses is to do it. There's really nothing else.
Definitely tried to cut out the ums before, and it does not work.
Yeah.
So I can back that. Yeah. No, it's brutal. I mean, I remember going through some of the lines and talking it. I mean, thinking through in my head how impactful it'll be for this moment if it's said this way.
Oh, yeah.
And then trying to, like, cut it up to communicate that emotion. And I'm like, it's like what you said. That's for me. Great. But if it isn't right and it wasn't done that way, you can only do so much to, like, fake it or bring it to that or push it in one direction. But after that, it was like,
even in animation, like, at a certain point, everything's drawn or rendered.
Yeah.
Everything, all the voice actors are done. You have what you have. And at that point, cutting is all you have left, right? Like, I mean, I know there's times you have to hit, like, if you're animation, you want to hit 22 minutes, that's fine. But, like, at a point, all you can do is cut. And so I would also say this, not for nothing, but watch things that you don't normally watch is the other thing I'd say. Like, that's the other key. Like, you have to, I don't know, if you only ever watch one kind of show, I don't think you're going to be that, like, yeah, you might be able to get away with it, but, like, you can learn by watching. And you know, as a writer, you got to read, you know, it's all those things. But yeah, it's the hardest thing you will ever do. But that's a great line, but it's not necessary. That's why you need friends that are smarter than you.
Yeah. I have a bunch of those. I'm covered.
There you go.
That certainly, I'll be good there. Yeah. Oh man.
All right.
Well, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens in the editing room next.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll just shred the script and call it a day. After rough cut 1 or 2, I'll look at it. I'll be super happy. I'll make a bunch of changes. I'll say, great, this is how long? Like you said, 4 hours. Or if it's a short, it's 20 minutes over. Great. Okay. Perfect. Where's the shredder? Let's get rid of this. Somebody else look at it. Tell me what they hate. Tell me to my face. Make me cry, and then get to it.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think what Dazed and Confused was like that. Dazed and Confused was 2.5 hours.
It's crazy long.
Linklater didn't want to cut anything. I mean, it's an 87-minute final product, by the way, released. I really want to see the 2-hour cut. Like, I think it would be interesting to see what he really wanted to, but like, nobody's releasing a 2.5-hour cut.
No, it's a big thing now to have like a 2 or 3 hour movie. Now it's like a spectacle, and it's like you go and you're like prepared, but that doesn't seem like it's the.
No, I think
I don't know what the standard is, but that doesn't seem like the.
No, I still think we're waiting for a renaissance of like 87, 89, 92 minute movies to come back. Like the 90-minute mark to be the 90-minute mark to mean something. But right now it doesn't. Like one of my favorite movies, and it's what people used to call guilty pleasures, but like I don't feel guilty about liking it at all, so I don't give a fuck. Real Genius is 87 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's got Val Kilmer in probably his best role. And it's got William Atherton as just another 80s asshole, right? Like he did it in Ghostbusters. He did it in it's 87 minutes. Like maybe I'd like to live in the world more, but they told the story.
Mm-hmm.
The story's done. You don't, it doesn't need even 2 hours. And I know, like I get crap for this, for a few of my friends. I hate the Nolan verse because I think every Christopher Nolan movie's too long. My favorite Christopher Nolan movie is Interstellar, and I think that's too long.
Yeah, Interstellar was 3. Was it 3 hours?
I don't know if it was 3. I think it was 2.
It was nearly 3.
Yeah, it was nearly 3. But I look at every Batman in the Nolan verse, and I go, I think I could keep it as the same quality of movie and cut 20 minutes from each of these 3. And I feel like I'm unqualified to do that. And I feel like I still can.
Sure.
Right? Like it's not like, all right, go cut 5 minutes out of Ghostbusters. Like, I don't know if I can do that because it's pretty good. But like Nolan always leaves in too much. And this is not Lord of the Rings extended editions either. That's, I think, the key, right? Like if the Nolan releases were the extended editions and there were shorter versions that were released in theaters, I think they would have done much better.
Where do you see I'm curious then, so where do you see filmmaking going in the next, like, I don't know, like what kinds of trends do you see emerging? We still kind of do have that miniseries epidemic going on.
Oh God.
I don't know how
no,
you feel
it's
about that.
The miniseries epidemic is killing me because I'll see a trailer for something I'm interested in.
Sure.
And then I'll be like, oh, that's a movie I want to see. And like my wife will be like, that's a miniseries. I'm like, well, I'm not watching 6 hours. Like I'm just not, like, I'm sorry. Like I feel like, and I know people are sick of Marvel, but like, all right, so what was it? Ms. Marvel.
Okay.
Ms. Marvel comes after basically everybody's sick of all of the Avengers stuff. The MCU is overblown, and Ms. Marvel comes out on Disney Plus. Ms. Marvel's a great series. It should have been a movie, right? Captain and the Winter Soldier, or whatever, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 6 episodes or 4 episodes. Again, decent series, probably should have been a movie, right? I think we're just trying to fill space, and there's no need for it. There's no one in positions of power that are looking at anything other than the bottom line. So instead of, hey guys, we can release this on Disney Plus, but like, this would be better as a 2-hour movie. Can you cut 2 hours out of this? Yes, probably. Like, that's possible, but they didn't, and they didn't want to. And I feel like that's a thing where, like, now, I might like it. You're not going to get me to watch it as a series. It's just not something I'm going to take the time for, because the thing nobody talks about is we're not comfortable with an end. Like, let's be real about this. How many things would have been better with, like, no sequel?
Oh, I mean,
do you know what I mean? And the same thing goes for like a miniseries that gets, it did so well that we're going to make 6 more episodes.
Right.
It's like, no. You had a perfect 6-episode mini arc. Leave it alone, right? And
call it. Yeah.
I just think that we have lost sight of what the old Hollywood was probably better at. And when I say old Hollywood, I mean well before you and me, where it's like, we want to tell a good story. We want to make this a spectacle. We're not trying to make a franchise. We're just trying to entertain people for 90 minutes or whatever. I think that, like, the innovation now is not, I don't know where it's going to come from. Like, right now, my favorite streaming service is Nebula, because it's creator owned and they allow creators to do things they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But it's small. Would I want more from it? Yes. But am I okay not getting more for it because I know everybody's treated well and paid well and that some people get to do things that they wouldn't normally get to do? Yes. But I'm also a creator, so I can go behind the scenes and go, that's okay. I'm not getting enough because I'm getting good stuff, and that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're just looking at it all wrong. And I think, yeah, of course, content is a bad word. I don't create content. I mean, what are you? Well, I write a blog. I create a podcast. I edit other podcasts. But I don't create content. That's for other people. That's for people that want to churn it out. I don't look at anything I do for pay or for pleasure as just get it done. Like, no.
Right.
Like, why do it then? I'm lucky in the stuff that I get to create because most of it's a passion project. The blog is once a week. The podcast is every 2 weeks. And I've basically future-proofed it by being able to work ahead because I'm not trying to chase breaking news.
Right, of course.
Which also means, as happens, I can get depressed and not feel like writing. But I've got the next 10 posts already drafted, right? Like, that's fine. And we're recording, and I don't know, 6, 8, 10 episodes recorded. I still need to buckle down and edit. But the hard part's done. Or depending on how I'm feeling, the hard part's done,
Yeah.
So I build in my ebbs and flows. But I don't churn it out for the sake of it, right? But it also goes back to, how do you feel about what you create? Because I don't know what I really think it would be great to have a statistic, but I can't go back in time. But I would like to say I don't have any bad episodes. There's a couple like where the guest sound quality was not what I would like, and I spent hours trying to make it as good as I could.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, outside of those few episodes, there's got to be like 20, 25 where after I stopped recording, I went, that's a bad episode. But then I had listened to it back when I edit it and I go, I don't know what the problem with that was.
Right.
You know, and so there is that kind of like, I don't know how much of it is momentary bias. I don't know how much of it is just that kind of perfection creeping up where like maybe all 25 of those episodes I clicked the off record button and it was simply that I forgot to ask one follow-up. And that's apparently all I was thinking about. And so it's like, wow, screwed up that one. And then, you know, you come back because you forget whatever you forgot to ask. Now, look, when you edit your own stuff, you remember all the flubs and everything. It all comes back to you. But when you've edited 20 minutes of a 68-minute podcast and it's good and you get to that 29th minute when you forgot to ask the follow-up and you go, yeah, but it doesn't ruin it. Okay, well then, so that's moment bias, I guess. That's recency bias. Like that's not me, but I can tell you it's got to be at least 25 episodes I've walked away from going like, that's crap. My wife has been here for all of them. I'm sure like she can attest to the fact that like there are moments when, because I record at night, she's usually in bed when I'm done. When I'll come into the bedroom and be like, nah, it was crap. Now she can't, unless she can remember and parse out or write something down, she doesn't know which ones were good or bad when she listens to them in a few weeks when they release. And I usually end up going, I don't remember why I thought this was bad. But again, it's that process. And I think maybe this is important for you to know that like, I'm over 100 into this particular podcast. And I still have that feeling after I hit record before I get to the editing bay, which I guess is a way of saying just how important that editing bay really is. And I don't know if that's the safety net that we talked about from live or live to tape, or if it's space. Like just the idea of time between, I just finished that draft, I'm going to put it on a shelf and go outside and I'll reach out and I'll do the edit next week where I don't remember what I just didn't write versus what I did, right? Like, so there's a lot of things in play here, but it's a long way to say like there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in the moment that the thing is happening. But when you have an editing process, it gives you space, it gives you time, it can breathe, you can grow. You know, like there's all these things that happen and then you come back to it and you go, it wasn't so bad. You know,
I mean, that space for me was everything. And when I edit, oh my God, I can't. I mean, it was, you're under the gun when you're in school and it's your job to do certain things and write a script.
But you still give yourself some space.
I feel like now that it's been a few months, I've almost forgotten what it was like to write a line of dialogue, be beyond upset, walk away and come back to it the next day and go, oh, all right, well, I'll just do this instead. And it works out. Or go down the line, write this whole thing, spend a week writing, you know, some big moment or something, and then going, well, that was crap. Like, that's why on earth? And like, you have to sit there and remember that you're doing it and progress is progress no matter what. And so getting that out was good and is good. And, I'm done now and I'm happy with the result. And that's how it goes. And it's almost weird thinking about that because that's such a unique little bubble. And then when you take it to the editing room, like you were saying, after we shot, our most students, after they shot their projects, they did not, only a few people did I see step into the editing room immediately. And most of it was, transcoding and preparing for the edit. Not a ton of people, at least who were shooting in the earlier slates, were putting together their, rough cut immediately and then going, all right, well, let's try, let's get to it. Let's make the second cut and the third and the fourth and getting after it, which evidently was maybe not smart because then we were really under pressure because we had a deadline. But
yeah, but I no, I don't know. I mean, yeah, but a deadline's I mean, look, there's no motivator like a deadline. But yeah. I also think there's an argument to be made that had everything happened and we just cut out the space in between, that it's definitely not as good a project. Like that ability to let it breathe, to step away from it for anything. And I was not a smoker when I had my corporate job in marketing, but I used to take a walk all the time because it was like, I can't stare at this screen anymore. I'm just going to remove myself from it. And even 5 or 10 minutes for small little work corporate things helps. But when you've been shooting for a week or 5 days or 72 hours, you need more than 5 minutes, right? Like you need to decompress. It's not, and you need space. And I think I have no problem saying it now. I think as creatives and creators, the thing we need space from is the things we didn't say. We need space from our decisions. You chose to shoot this with a fisheye lens on the ground looking up. That's a decision you made not to shoot it from somewhere else. You need 24 hours, 48 hours, a week to get away from the decision. So when you sit in the editing booth, you are in with what you have and not constantly thinking about the shot you didn't do. And for writing, it's the same way. You sit down with the draft that you just finished, and when you start to edit it, you're immediately reminded of the words that you didn't choose in the moment while you were writing it, which is not helpful to the editing process. This is where you need that space. I think it's more for us to forget the road we didn't take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's all you remember when if you turn it around immediately and you go, all right, well, time to get back into this. It's like, no, we need time to forget that. Then we'll be fine. Like, I think that's almost everything in every creative process. But I think it takes all of us time to learn that, because you learn that a lot by doing. It's the first time you step away and come back and it works that you go, oh, I still had to force it, but I was not looking at it for the last 2 days. I actually took the weekend off or whatever. I mean, that just opens this door of like, I put it on a shelf. It's just the process. That's one of the reasons I work so far ahead, is because then I can come back to this edit in a month.
Yeah, you create the space.
Yeah. And so I don't know what the end product of this episode sounds like if I just turned it around, right? If I was like, all right, I'm just going to edit this tomorrow. Like, that's not enough space. I'm still going to think of all the things I didn't ask you, right? Or the things that when you asked me, I didn't say.
Right.
That's horrible. That's a horrible place. You can't create or mold or edit in that frame of mind.
At that point, script it.
Yeah, right. Like that's
yeah.
But even then, you finish the script
Then
and you're
you
like, did I finish it? Am I good? Am I
yeah.
done?
That's the thing is you just at this point that would just be moving that process of space. You just be finished with that,
Yeah.
and instead, it's for later, which, but yeah, I guess that exists in every you know every step along the way you need to walk away.
So
I definitely
I need to ask you this question, right? So
yeah, please.
you just spent 20 minutes, the listening audience, whatever, spent
Mhm.
20 minutes listening to me talk about process, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Pre-college, are you interested in process at all? Not necessarily just for movies, but just in general. Like, are you I'm kind of
Am I
interested.
like habits driven, like?
No, just process. Like, as far as like, all right, um, I see a play on. I mean, I look at sports and video games as the real way to do it, right? It's like I saw a play action pass in a college football game. I can study how that came to be when I play Madden, right? Like, I might not do well, but I can see how everything moves, maybe even more so than instant replay, because I get to control it and I get to see where all the moving pieces are. And that's just one example, but it's also like, I saw a movie, I want to know how that's made. Or like, were you interested in because I have a friend who's a process guy. He'll introduce himself as a process guy. It's always more interesting to know how the thing got made than to watch the thing, almost, for him. So like, obviously now you're in it and we can talk about this. You've built things and you've started to create your own process. But like, was you always interested in the process, or is that as you've kind of come to film?
I definitely think with film, I've been more interested in the process. Obviously, I mean, that's an easy, no shit answer. And I guess I've always been involved in, I've always wanted to know
Okay.
why something is. I guess that's sort of process in a way.
It is.
That need for an answer and a starting point and how we got somewhere. So, like, when it came to, I don't know, like, I was always interested in math, but I was never good at it.
Okay.
And I wanted to always know why we were doing things and how something was applicable. But I think I wanted to know beyond, these are the steps and this is the answer. Like, I think I was always like, what are we doing? Not like, and not just that question of like, oh, how's this, going to apply when I'm, buying chips at a, convenience store. It's like, no, I just wanted to know where things come from.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is not the focus necessarily of, every class, especially math, when you're taking, whatever algebra 2 trigonometry or, calculus or something, and they're just kind of cramming content in so you're ready for a test and you can get the answers and it's all answers. And if you get all the answers, great, you got a good score. It's like, that's awesome. And sure, there's, that's important, obviously, but I definitely was always stuck thinking about why something was in order to inform the solution or answer. And that probably is why I liked storytelling and English classes and history classes and art classes and things that were more.
Well, it goes into the philosophy of it basically as well.
Yeah,
like it's kind of like that extension of like, it's the English/art teacher that we all have one of, usually, if you're lucky, maybe 2 or 3 if you're really lucky. That's like, all right, you painted a picture. Now, why did you paint? Like, they ask you the question that you're always asking. And and the first time you get it, you're stumped. Because you're like, well, I'm supposed to be the one asking that question. Like, I'm supposed to be the one asking why. And now all of a sudden, I wrote this short story, and this English teacher's like, well, why did that happen? And you're like, I didn't think anybody would ask me. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, that's
pretty much. It's when it's flipped on you, there's a little more weight.
Yeah.
And with that, a little more understanding. And so, the first question, if I'm writing, the first question I'm asking is, why do I want to tell the story? And that's the first question that I'm, now going through school. That's the first question you're kind of taught to ask is, what's the point? Why are you doing this? What's that? But I think I always, as a kid, was curious and wanted to know what the point was or why things happen always. And the routine that I so desperately hold on to that is now gone from my life, I rejected it probably sometimes when it came to things like math class that were just start, stop, and other things related to that. So I guess to bring it back, I guess I am a process person, and I know that helps me, and it helps me think and problem solve and understand.
Yeah.
So I look for that, I suppose.
Yeah. The other piece to like podcasting, filmmaking, movie making, storytelling is we are always better with limited resources. Don't let anyone ever tell you like, oh, more money is going to be better. It's like, I don't know that that's true. More time is going to be better. Well, as you just heard us discuss for the last however long, like more time away is better, but more time not necessarily better, right? And so I think of, all right, it's been, this is going to test the old memory. Maybe a decade, maybe 2013, 2015, 2016. It's been at least 8 years, maybe 10, since I wrote my last true short story, like an actual factual. I've written some essays that haven't made it to the blog for publish, or like some things that are on a shelf that I'm not sure what to do with. But my last true short story I wrote on lunch break from my corporate job at a diner that I went to have lunch at, specifically to get some writing done. And there was one constraint on it. It was when everybody was doing those writing challenges, and it was the 1, 2, 3, 4 challenge. And you had to write a short story with 1,234 words. That's it. You get a word count. That's it. And I'm at the diner with my earbuds in on the phone with a buddy of mine going, I just don't have anything to write about. Like the word count is not enough of a structure because I can still write about anything. So we were talking, and he's like, maybe you should write about, I don't even know how it came about. Actually, I already did a whole episode about how it came about, but somehow I figured out what the topic was going to be. And once I had the topic and the word count constraint, then I was able to just write. And then you finish and you go, all right, that's 1,300 words. It's time to edit. And then I'm good. I've accomplished the mission, right? Or maybe it was, 1,100 words, time to add something, right? But he gave me the prompt. And somebody else had given me the constraint of words. But I don't think that story, and I'm proud of that story, I don't think that story gets written without both of those constraints. Like, the constraint was he and I were trying to come up with a topic, and he was just saying, well, how about you just write about this or that? And it was like, oh, but that other thing, I think I can write it. Yeah, okay, good, I'll do that. And I have a word count. All right, let's go. Because now I have an end. I have a concrete end. You're going to start this. But after the first word, that's one word down, right? And now it was a phrase, a terminology or whatever. So I didn't really have like to world build. I just had to tell this story. And so it's one of those things where it's like, all right, those constraints allowed me to write it. I haven't really written a short story start to finish since. And now we're, if we want to be more generous with the timing, I mean, it's all there. It's whatever episode I premiered that on for this show, because I wanted to share it again and I had the audio. I was like, all right, well, that's fine. But we'll say it's been a decade now. Like the other things I write, I read a book. Here's my review. Again, that's concrete. That's, you're writing about this topic, this book. And my blog philosophy is you tell the story till it's done. But I don't need to aim for a word count. I'm not trying to, it's got to be, if it's not, I don't know, 2,000 words, it's not going to, no, I don't care. I'm sharing with you. I read this book. It's good. It's bad. It's indifferent, but this may or may not be interesting for you. And so for the creative side, I almost feel like I need a jumpstart with some kind of constraint. And maybe it's because I've been blogging for 10 years. And it's like, so everything's always started out with an idea, like a topic, a book, a genre, like it's very specific. But I can't, if I don't have that, I'll sit down at a blank page and then 10 minutes later get up from a blank page, right? Like I need to sit down with an idea. I'm not going to, and I can write out ideas. That's a whole different process. It's a whole different thing. And then you end up with a thing of ideas that you never write about because you just wrote them down and that was that, right? Like,
yeah, been there.
But yeah, I feel like those constraints, whatever they are, budgetary, word count, time, space, even, that's where everything really happens. For whatever it is, right? Like I'm working in an audio space where I refuse to let an episode go over 90 minutes. Which is why this is your second appearance on the show.
Yeah.
But it's things like that where it's like, all right, well, we'll keep rolling and I'll do a second episode. And I've done that before. Like this is not my first single recording that spawned 2 episodes.
Right.
But I'm used to that and I'm okay with that. And I'm not, it goes back to the editing thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to turn around and go, well, I guess I got to cut it. It's like, yeah, I can cut it in half. We've done 2 episodes. It's that kind of thing. But you learn that as you go along. And my constraint of 90 minutes, I try and aim for 75, but sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter. I don't have a minimum, it's fine, but those are self-imposed, but I think they're important because otherwise you and I could just talk for 4 hours and I could just release it. But that doesn't seem, I don't know, there's something less sporting about it. There's something less about it. Than just like, all right, stop, upload, no editing, there are pieces to this that make it artistic. Mm-hmm. And I think those are important pieces.
I mean, it's like what you talked about with the content stuff.
Yeah.
We release 4 hours of talking. All right. A lot of content, a lot of stuff. And then you do it again and again and again and again versus what you were saying about really putting together a nice story that is not as long or not as, or isn't, it's the 87-minute movie, the 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of value in that. And just being able to sit down and say, this is a moment in time and We're going to appreciate it, and then we'll move on, and then there will be another one.
That's the other forgotten like child of all of this is like, it's okay that you don't get a sequel. You're just going to get another brand new movie to experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing wrong with that. This is why, yeah, I pay for a minimum number of services. I don't pay for every service. Because why? I don't want to throw my money away, and I can't watch everything anyway. But my go-to, outside of my love for Nebula, my go-to is YouTube before I check Netflix and Disney. Yeah, there's going to be some good releases on there from maybe actors or directors I like. But I've found some very compelling small creators making good stuff on YouTube that I like as much as the Netflix thing or the Disney thing. So why should I limit myself to be like, well, it's what I pay for? Like, that's fine. And everybody's like, like, I don't have Apple. People are like, oh, you'd really like this show or that show. It's like, yeah, maybe I would. But like, I've watched a ton of things that you've never heard of. Oh no. Like, it's just there again. And, this is the thing that you'll get used to as you further yourself in any creative pursuit, writing, editing, podcasting, movie making, TV. If you're creating something, you have less time to consume it. It's just, you have to make the time to consume it. Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm going to be watching a Marx Brothers movie soon because I've been meaning, like, it's been gnawing at me that it's been years since I've watched one. But that's going to take the place of some new movie because I'm spending all my time editing or writing or doing something else. I don't have just unlimited time. All right. So that means that when I go to a social gathering and people are like, did you catch that new thing on whatever? No, I watched Duck Soup again for the 100th time because I really wanted to.
Sure.
It's
yeah.
okay. It's fine. But like these things are, I bring up Duck Soup, but like, could be coconuts, or it could be like, I still love 2008's Iron Man. I love Real Genius. I love, like, these are movies that are, like, I love Twister, like the original. I haven't seen the new one yet because I don't have the time. But like, these are movies that I return to because they're foundational. I love The Fifth Element. It's so big. We don't make movies that big anymore. And when he did in Valerian, everybody panned it because it was too big. If you don't like the movie, you don't like the movie. But don't tell me it's too big. We want our movies to be big. Don't tell me it's the movie's too grand in scope when the Super Bowl's the most watched football game of the year because it's so grand. Don't tell me that your art can't be grand too. Like, there's so many, when you're creating it, and you hear all these talking points that make no sense. It's just frustrating because it feels like the people that we are as creators, it feels like our club's getting smaller and smaller. Because what I just said makes sense to you because you've created something before. And a lot of people that are listening right now, because I've spent a lot of time in my outro telling people to make their thing, have made things. But it also means that when people don't like something and they've never made something, their excuses for not liking it are vastly different than what you and I would take away from it. And those are often the loudest voices on the internet and the loudest voices in the room. And it's also like, no, that movie wasn't bad. It's just that the three people that hated it were the loudest in the room. I don't know. I don't know how we changed the discussion. We just came off an election year where I would argue our media literacy is probably the lowest it's ever been. But I think that extends beyond political ads and political hyperbole into, and news in general, into the way people view film and TV and podcasts. Like, it just, they don't know what they're consuming. Whatever's comfortable. And again, I just mentioned a whole bunch of old movies I watch all the time. I go back to comfortable's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have a very specific reason why I may go back to all of those things. And I think a lot of people just get comfortable, and being comfortable, I don't think is a good enough reason to go back to something. So I hope we get better, because your career is going to be very short if it doesn't change soon. Right? Like, I mean, it's 2025. We don't know what the future holds, other than we're currently in a climate where making a movie and not releasing it is cheaper than not making a movie or making a movie and releasing it. And so in that logistical conundrum, I just, wash my hands and go, all right, I'll make my own thing then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else we can do. But I wish you all the luck as you navigate this, because look, I've toyed with video, and I may continue to dabble, but I've found a soft spot for edited audio, and that's where I'm going to stay. Yeah. I'll probably continue to mess with video. Like, that's not my first. And I don't know where you're going to end up. So I'm kind of excited for you. You get to try a ton of stuff.
Yeah, this will be fun. It'll be exactly what you said. It'll be me doing a bunch of different things in the next few years. And we'll check in. And you'll say, what have you been up to? And I'll say, well, things have changed, or I'm doing this or that or whatever. And, we'll see. But it's exciting.
Yeah, that it is.
Yeah. But it's interesting to think about how, how film and television and all this stuff is going to be, where it's going, where it's going to go, what it's going to look like in 10 years, in 5 years, in 2 years, because it's changing quick. And I mean, just the way that the way that we consume media changed because of COVID. And that was a huge thing. And, my parents talked about, they hadn't been to the movie theater. Obviously they didn't go during the pandemic, but they hadn't been after that time passed. They didn't go for probably a year or two.
I still haven't
maybe
been.
After.
And I'll go one step further. I think it had been maybe Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Or actually the last Star Wars trilogy ended after that. So that might have been the last one I watched. But I have some good art house cinemas, but you get one night to watch an independent feature sometimes. And if you're busy, if you have a family, you're just not. So if I wanted to do independence and I said, well, there's no tentpole movies I want to see anymore.
Right.
That's fine. But I can't get out on a Saturday night for that one showing of that one movie at exactly 7:15, as opposed to if it was on at 10 or whatever. So I'll just wait for it on streaming. And it's not a convenience thing, but it really is, because it's all right, this is getting harder and harder to fit in.
Yeah.
And do you want me to watch it? I mean, I guess, Hal, do you want me to watch your movie or not? I guess, you know what I mean? I know there are purists, and I'm friends with quite a few of them that are you have to see it on the big screen at the big. Sure. But the question is not how I'm going to watch it. The question is, do you want me to watch your movie or not?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you want me to watch it, I may have to watch it at 1 a.m. when I finish all my other work.
Sure.
Are you okay with that? I don't make this podcast for people to listen to only when they're in the car, or like only when they're exercising, or only when they're sitting down doing nothing on a Sunday afternoon over like an old school radio. You know, like I don't. Whatever you're doing right now is how you're consuming this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like more movies need to be okay with that. And I think a lot of purists and a lot of filmmakers are relying on the purists to be like, no, you have to go to the theater. It's like, well, I think your ship has sailed. I think everything's changed. It's not done changing. I think that's maybe very important to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where it ends, and neither does anyone else. So until then, you know, it just boils down to, do you want me to watch it or not? Oh, by the way, Mr. Movie Maker, don't make 12 movies in a year. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, this is the other, you know, it's the same thing. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're all their own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's no simple answer. I do still believe, I kind of still believe, though, that less would be more right now.
Yeah.
Just in general, not just run times, but like theatrical releases, television series, all of it. Like, less would be kind of more.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there yet, though.
No, I guess not.
So before I get into it, I have one very important clarification to make. I misspoke when I said that the more you edit, the easier it becomes. It's much more accurate to say that the more you edit, the more comfortable it becomes. I don't know that it's ever easy, especially when it's your own work you're editing. Now, on to the rest. Why are we trying to fill space with a series when it could be a movie? Why aren't we comfortable with an ending? These are questions for longer conversations, but what I would like to cover is this. Creators see the world in a very different way than those who don't create. It's just that simple. And based on that notion, at minimum, it seems those loud voices on the internet must be consumers, not creators, because their lowest common denominator rhetoric about projects dismisses any semblance of respect for the work put into those projects. Or is this a media literacy failure on both sides, the creator and the consumer, in terms of the churn and burn? Some creators, meaning some very big studios, aren't looking at these pieces of art for what they are, and so in devaluing them, they allow the consumer to also devalue them, maybe even further. This completely ignores the talented writers, artists, actors, editors, and creatives who build the thing. But that's probably also something for another day, or many, many more days. Just remember this. I create this show, I host, edit, write, and produce this show. Hal has created, edited, scripted, directed, and acted in videos of varying lengths and types. We are two humans who created things. And we are just two of many people who create things that you listen to, watch, read, and otherwise consume. Even if a big production company or corporate entity is footing the bill or not, a human like Hal or myself was behind it in many, many positions. So be nice. You wouldn't like a world with no art. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files, episode 146. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact my guest Hal and myself in the show notes. You can visit Hal's website, halnathan.com, where you can see what he's been up to. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email and comments can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Hal, do you have one final question for me?
I do. First thing I noticed with your studio setup, in the background, you have 2 footballs.
I do, yeah.
What is that about? Were you a player? Are you a fan? Whose are those? Are they signed? I'm a sports guy.
You know what? I don't think they're signed.
Okay.
I am, and I never played. I was in the band. I got yelled at for paying attention to the football game in high school marching band. That was me, right? I was in pep band, and I was the loudmouth in the pep band that tried to get a technical foul called on myself. I came very close. I got yelled at by vice principals and principals, never referees. Right,
nice.
Close.
Nice.
So the 2 footballs behind me, one I've had for quite a while, and that is the Boise State Fiesta Bowl win over Oklahoma, undefeated season football. And that one I've had for quite a while. My father was in tourism, and I followed him into it for a while. But before I got to tourism, he had won a packet from Boise that was years after the Fiesta Bowl, but it contained the football and like a Boise State mug from the championship season and some other stuff. And I remember, I was part of that generation that went home after college and spent a little too much time there. But like, I was living with my parents post-college when that game happened. So I was watching that game in the living room as Boise State's coming back in this improbable victory. Like, out of my mind, because I'm a big college football guy, but I just pick I don't really have a team, right? I just like college football. So I was rooting for the underdog. I was rooting against Oklahoma.
Why not?
At the time, no one knew Boise State, right? Like this was their calling card on. So as that game's happening, I'm just like, my parents are asleep upstairs. Like I know I'm like 20 something, but like, you have to be quiet. It doesn't matter how exciting the thing is. And so, that was, so I think my father just bid on it, and he happened to win, or put in for a raffle and he happened to win. And I ended up with the football and the mug.
Nice.
Over my other shoulder.
Yeah.
Is, a Toronto Argonauts CFL championship football. That's a mistake. And so what we'll talk about is the Toronto Argonauts are a CFL team, and on it are listed all of the championship years up through 2024, but not including 2024 when they won the Grey Cup last year. Mm-hmm. So this only goes up to 2022, which was the last one they won when it was printed.
Gotcha.
And that was given to me by my aunt and uncle who live in Toronto and have Argos season tickets. And that is, I do have a rooting interest. I did finally pick a CFL team, and the Argos were going to be it.
Nice.
And so they because they have 2 season tickets, I think they got 2 footballs, and I ended up with 1. However, this is a mistake because this football is the same size as the other football. Canadian footballs are not the same as American footballs. And so it's the same size, even though it should be slightly larger in the middle.
Are they Canadian footballs are supposed to be, they're larger?
Yeah. Or wider in the middle. Yeah. And then what you can't see, because my big head, is my Orioles stuff.
I see that.
So that's
I saw the Orioles pennant.
Yeah. And then I also have I have a pennant from '83 when they last won a championship, and I have the Cal Ripken Wheaties and a classic Cal O's and some other stuff. Yeah, no, wow. I could go off on sports for a long time. I feel like if you're a sports guy and an artist of any stature, I think you'll do very well, because I always tell people that everybody makes fun of people for like liking sports at a certain point, especially sports people. You mentioned lacrosse. I always watch the Final Four, every Memorial Day weekend.
Oh yeah, sure.
And that comes in handy while I'm also like, yeah, but I also want to watch like the Indy race. Like I love sports in general, but I also think it's helped me get through life because there's always going to be a sports fan in the room. And if you're well-rounded, just check the box score. It's fine. Like, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. I don't like the NFL, but I watch the NFL so I can talk to other people about the NFL. It's fine. But yeah, no, that's the story of I think they are the only two footballs in my house.
That's it. The football, the college football, and the mistake Canadian football that is not larger in the middle.
Yep.
That's weird. Have you thrown a Canadian football?
I feel like I have, but not for a very long time. And it's
harder. Is it a difficult? I mean, I don't have.
They adjust, right? Like I feel like there are Americans that have done well. Warren Moon and Doug Flutie, I guess, two examples of guys that have done well in both leagues. So while it's not fair to, maybe compare everybody because but like, I feel like it's just something you get used to. Just like when in gym class you're shooting hoops and like there's 12 balls in play and it's like, well, this one's got a little bit more air and this one has way too much air, and you just kind of get used to it as you go along. But I don't. Yeah, I only ever played for fun. I never played for like organized. But
yeah. No, I didn't either. I was always interested in football, but there was no way. Both of my uncles were football players, and then David, who went off he did a lot of rugby stuff.
Yeah.
David,
who makes fun of me because I'm like, yeah, but I prefer sevens, and he's like, oh, get out of here. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I prefer sevens. Yeah. Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
He was a big football player and then obviously rugby. And I do remember him asking me if I was ever going to play football, but this was when I was, the short, scrawny kid who barely was getting into lacrosse. I mean, I played baseball and I like baseball a lot. I stopped playing baseball for a little bit because I was always had like a lot of energy and I needed to run, and baseball, unfortunately,
you don't get that option.
It's just that it's a little slow, and I love the sport, and I've gotten into it recently, and having, a lot of my friends are into baseball too, so I end up watching it, and I don't know. I mean, I remember it from playing Little League and stuff, and it was a blast, but, yeah, I guess I then decided lacrosse was the answer, being the small kid. And, instead of baseball, I'm going to get whacked with a metal pole. That's a great idea, which that still was, every once in a while you get a tough bruise.
Okay. No, look, I would have tried out for the team had my high school had one, but they
didn't even have one.
No, but I went to high school in northeastern Pennsylvania. Uh-huh. My dad, but I knew about lacrosse because my dad grew up in Baltimore. So like I kind of knew about lacrosse in a way that no one else did. And when in high school, they would pull out the fake plastic sticks.
Yep.
I brought in a real stick, and there was the only time that the gym teacher liked me, because I would bring in a real stick and just throw back and forth with him with a real stick while everybody was using the plastic sticks.
Those little like shovels. Yeah, those were the worst.
Yeah. And so, and then ironically, the guy who, one of my first jobs was at a like gaming store, and the guy who owned it was also a track coach, but he also came from a not a lacrosse background, but he had a lacrosse stick. And in order to keep me in shape in the summer, we would basically get one of those old 2-gallon Gatorades, put it in the middle of a field, and we would just guard each other. And you only got a drink if you knock the ball over with the Gatorade over with the ball, which, by the way, is harder to do at the beginning when it's full than it is at the end. And so, like, I still have these like weird like flashes of like, yeah, maybe it could have been a lacrosse thing, but it wasn't an option for me. And that's fine, because again, also small, scrawny kid, there's only so much you can do. But look, I'm always on to talk sports. Like, yeah, I mean, there are very few sports I don't like. So
Yeah, you mentioned NASCAR. That's beyond my. I mean, I barely know baseball. I'm just getting back into it. NASCAR. I mean, right? I think you said. What did you say? The Indy
no,
500?
I said Indy, but I watch
Oh, Indy.
NASCAR. I watch,
Yeah.
a Formula. I got into all the motorsports, through either family or from other things. Yeah, and I think baseball's the key.
Mhm.
If you think baseball is interesting, and I do, then it's really hard to say to somebody that NASCAR is boring because there's as much strategy in it. Like when you get past they just go around in circle versus when you get past you're just waiting for somebody to hit the ball.
Yeah.
The strategy beyond that, it's not the same, but it's equal. Like it's still there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's kind of where you go like, all right, well, it's all, and this is the other reason I don't watch so many movies and watch so many TV.
Mhm.
There's always a sports thing on.
Yeah.
I like soccer
Yeah.
too, and it's always a season somewhere, right? Like it's just, the only thing I don't do is regular season hockey and regular season basketball because half the leagues make the playoffs, and I only ever tune in for the playoffs. And that's just my complaint about that stuff. But otherwise,
right.
I'll watch anything, yeah, and I'll talk about anything.
That's funny. That is exactly what I probably was thinking as a kid. Was now I like baseball because I'm in it for the strategy. I'm not playing it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's a good sport. As a kid, you know, just having a ton of energy and being hyped up on sugar and sitting in a classroom all day and then going out and trying to play baseball and I'm waiting for somebody to hit. Oh my God, I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
So then I was like, all right, I got to try something else. And my neighbor played lacrosse. My good friend played lacrosse, and we had those, shovel plastic sticks that you were talking about too.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun. And the teacher was, and you're always running around. And I was like, all right, well, that's pretty cool. And so I borrowed my neighbor's gear, signed up for a camp. And like the first day I was like learning the basics, and one of the coaches, it was like a, camp for kids who were obviously just starting the sport. And the guy was like, have you ever played before? And I was like, no, this is my first time. And he was like, oh, geez. Okay. All right, fine. Let's do this. And then they took us all aside and we learned actually how to play. And then we got back into the groups and figured it out. It was a ton of fun, and there was nonstop movement. But I do remember the first time getting hit, and that was not pleasant. And I was close to walking away at that point because, scrawny kid and coming from baseball where, I mean, I was worried about, I remember there was a kid who was obviously older than all of us. And it was like it was Little League. He was on some team that was not great, but he was the best player, and he was huge. And he threw crazy fastballs.
Okay.
And we're all sitting there shivering, waiting to get up to the plate. And I was on deck, and one of my friends, she gets hit in the face.
Oh, okay.
With the ball. It was awful. And the kid was, he's a nice guy. He came over, apologized, but it was, a horrible thing. And then I'm sitting up there next, and my feet are like at the edge of the box, like trying to. Do I have to stand in the batter's box? Can I get out of this? I was basically, I mean, every 2 seconds it was somebody saying, all right, move in a little closer. You're standing at the edge of the batter's box. And I was like, no way, absolutely not doing that. So getting hit by a pitch was like the worst.
I had that in practice where one of my best friends was the catcher.
Mm-hmm.
And our pitcher was one of the bigger pitchers. And like, I don't know exactly how it happened, but like a fastball hit my buddy's knee, and it was practice. So it's not like he was full pads. And it was just like, I'm glad he's on our team, but like, I don't want to go up for batting practice when he's pitching. Like, it's just like it's funny. Like, I feel like everybody who's done Little League has that story of like, and either that's when I walked away, or like, that's kind of like where the end was. Like, it just takes one of those, like, it's not a contact sport, but it doesn't make it any less scary when you're younger.
No, of course not. Yeah. Oh my God. That was a huge, I'll never forget that. That was crazy. And then I think that was my first year of like Little League when people started taking it seriously. And then the next year we had a pretty good team and we won, and that was awesome. And for whatever reason, we finished that season. It was great. and then you were supposed to then move on to like the
Next level
majors,
up. Okay.
whatever that
Yep.
was. Yeah, and they had all new teams and this and that, and you had tryouts, and the tryouts were ridiculous. It was a bunch of people. Like they brought you into the high school gym, and we weren't even, we were still, I think this was fifth grade, was probably the fifth or sixth grade. We were moving on to the next group.
It's the weird, like you're still in little league, so you can't be a part of the like high school JV stuff, but like it gets super competitive.
Yeah, it was crazy. We were in middle school, and it was ridiculous.
At that point, it gets like, for those of us that were good enough but not great, it's like, all right, this is too competitive now. This is.
I was done. I was like,
okay.
I didn't care. I had actually, I think, exhausted.
Did you do basketball at all?
No,
because we had. I don't remember what it was called, but I played basketball like at that same. That was offset of Little League that I did with lower baskets or whatever.
Yeah. I love basketball. And I got into playing basketball after that was like a thing. I was never tall, so it didn't like, I'm 6 foot, which is like,
you're taller than basketball.
Me. Tall, maybe I but not for basketball.
Well, okay. Yeah. For basketball, that's fine.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, like when I was a kid and we played in gym.
So does that take off? Does that kind of take off after baseball then?
Basketball was.
Or was that just kind of like a constant in the playground and it doesn't?
I think it was mostly that.
Okay.
I was mostly just playing with friends, and I never was competitive with that. I mean, I wasn't like, we played knockout and like games, and it was fun.
Different drive than say lacrosse and baseball.
Yeah, lacrosse was so unheard of that I just kind of like, I did it and I just, kept learning. And so then you just sort of keep going and you do it. And eventually you're like, whoa, okay, I'm actually playing. I'm on the team and we're, winning this or losing that. Whereas basketball, like I knew it and I was just not good. I was short and also like couldn't reach the, like I wasn't reaching the rim and all that stuff. And I'd chuck up a ball. And like basketball unit was kind of just like everybody had fun playing games, but nobody was ever really teaching you how to shoot. And so as much as I loved playing with friends, and then I, in college would just play some, if we weren't playing lacrosse, sometimes we'd go to the gym and just play basketball, and it's a great time. But I suck. I'm awful. Like I can dribble okay and get to the rim or get an open shot. And then it's, that's about it. It's kind of done there. I'll take the shot.
I still go to the playground and shoot by myself, but like,
yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah, I'm with you. No.
Yeah.
Like if anybody wanted to get a dad league together, I'm still going to get picked last.
I agree. I think the only value I brought to the basketball court playing with friends was because lacrosse is an aggressive sport. I was like good at defense.
Okay.
But we're playing for nothing. So my defense in a high school or college or whatever setting, if I was even lucky enough to do that, it's probably a foul every 2 seconds. And so I'm like, I'm useless. And then at that point, I really can't do anything. So for me, basketball was always fun. Baseball was great, but I just needed something quicker because I had way too much energy. And that ended up being lacrosse. And I had some friends who played and all that. And so that was fun. I don't remember what I quit I quit baseball, and then the team, I did the tryout. I did that intense tryout with all the, coaches with their clipboards sitting in the thing and, judging a bunch of fifth graders. And we're all sitting there like, pitching and batting to nothing. And they're all writing stuff down and it's quiet. It's just, you could hear a pin drop for whatever reason. And then I was like, all right, you know what? I'm kind of done. I'm bored. Not fast, whatever. And some team had said, they have to take everybody. And they were like, oh, we really liked your pitching. We'd love to, have you on whatever. I think it was the Mets. They were like, the Little League Mets were like, we want you to be on the team. And I was like, that's really cool. You're not the Yankees though. And I was just done. And then I picked up lacrosse, and that year, a few of my friends who were on the Mets, they won the whole thing.
Okay.
And which was
I'll say this.
Just hilarious.
In the meantime, There are some sports I like that we haven't touched on. So if you ever get bored with all the other sports and making your films and series and writing, when you have free time, I may have some sports for you to check out.
Please let me know. Give me anything. Even the obscure, you have to dig deep.
All right.
Into the television to find it. I was watching I saw like YouTube highlights from I think it's a sport in Spain called like Highlight.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Send me that.